Hello friends, welcome back to my channel, and if you are just new, I'm Adeola Praise, and on this channel I create videos on productivity, self-development and academics. So this video is actually the first episode of a new series on my channel titled On Perfectionism, and this series is going to consist of 3 to 4 episodes talking about everything on perfectionism. So I'll start off this series by talking about who exactly is a perfectionist. The simplest way to define a perfectionist is one who refuses to settle with or accept anything less than perfect. Perfectionists are known for setting extremely high goals, and sometimes these goals can be unrealistic. They give a lot of attention to details and can get stressed over the slightest mistakes. Psychologists are worried about how this perfectionism trait is growing rapidly amongst children and adults in the 21st century. Yes, you heard me say children. There are some children who get stressed out or worried because their shoelaces are not of equal length or because they got a mark below the perfect score. According to research, 2 in 5 children or adolescents are perfectionists. The things you feel no one should worry about, a perfectionist actually does, and that's why it can be sometimes difficult to have them in a team because you might not see things in their own perspective. All this being said, how do you know you are a perfectionist, or how do you recognize one? Here are a few signs or traits that actually shows you are a perfectionist, or maybe someone close to you is a perfectionist. Perfectionists have this all or nothing way of thinking. Like I said earlier, they never settle with anything less than perfect. It's either perfect or not perfect. They are never satisfied with good enough or almost perfect because they see this as failures. A good example to illustrate this is a French artist, Claude Monet. He's known to have burnt down and destroyed most of his works out of frustration and rage because he considers them not good enough. In May 1908, an exhibition was scheduled to feature his latest paintings, which were a result of 3 years of hard work. But then, just before the exhibition, Monet took one last look at his paintings and determined that they were not good enough. Despite several protests, he took a knife and a paintbrush and destroyed all of his paintings, which were worth $100,000 as at then in 1908. Now, that's one huge perfectionist. In fact, he was such a perfectionist that he refused to paint unless the light of the sun reflected exactly the way he wanted. Crazy, right? But then that's why he's mostly considered as history's biggest perfectionist. Perfectionists are always focused on results. Once they have a projection of how their perfect plan should turn out, they remain focused on it. They don't appreciate small wins or enjoy the process of achieving their outcome because nothing is good enough until that perfect result is achieved. Perfectionists are highly critical. When things don't go as they expected, they tend to be really self-critical and become extremely hard on themselves. Once there's a little mistake, they term themselves as failures, regardless of it being their fault or not. A very good example to illustrate this is the famous female tennis player Serena Williams. She openly confessed that she is a perfectionist and she's known to get unnecessarily frustrated and very self-critical whenever she's not playing well. Perfectionists spend ridiculous amounts of time on projects. Now this is because they pay a lot of attention to details and are always trying to get the best result possible. They don't mind sacrificing their sleep, well-being, or putting off all other things. Now the last trait I'll be talking about is that perfectionists procrastinate a lot. They're always waiting for the perfect time to execute or take action. They'll put things off to the last minute because they're waiting for the perfect tool to execute their project, or the perfect person to put in the team, or the perfect title for their writings. Being a perfectionist myself, I discovered that I use an average of 1 week to come up with a perfect study plan. But then if I just used that 1 week to study, I would have gone a long way. But then That's how perfectionists are. I mean, it has to be perfect. In most cases, perfectionism usually applies to only certain areas of one's life. For instance, one can be a perfectionism in its career aspects, like writing, maintaining a good portfolio, or painting, but then wouldn't mind having an imperfect apartment or wardrobe or dorm room. There are certain misconceptions about perfectionism. Most perfectionists are usually tagged to have OCD, but there's actually a difference between the two. While a correlation might exist between OCD and perfectionism, not all people with perfectionism have OCD, and not all people with OCD are perfectionists. I'm not really into mental health, but then I believe a better understanding of the difference between OCD and perfectionism is very important. Hence, I'll be leaving some links to various videos and sites that have helped me understand the difference between these two. You can check them in the description box below after watching this video. Now, have you ever wondered, where does my perfectionism comes from? Is it genetics, or did I develop it, or was it imposed on me by the society, or is it a learned behavior? These are the questions I ask myself anytime my perfectionism manifests itself. Actually, researchers haven't really found what exactly causes perfectionism, but then I've made a list of those who are likely to become one. Let's go. The first are those with the melancholy personality traits or temperaments. Yeah, I'm sure you remember the 4 major temperaments, right? So from what I've been saying on perfectionism, I'm sure you've been able to discover a relationship between melancholics and perfectionists. Melancholics are very detail-oriented. They usually set unrealistic goals or high standards and then get stressed when these standards are not met. In case you don't know about the melancholy temperament, I'll be leaving a link in the description box below that explains this temperament in full details. Another set of people who are mostly perfectionists are those who wrap their self-worth around their achievements. These people are usually afraid of failure or disapproval from others and believe that personal acceptance hinges on being perfect. The last set of people I'm talking about are those who have a history of high achievements and are now faced with the pressure to live up to their previous achievements or even exceed it. A good example is a writer who has written a bestseller and is now faced with the pressure to write more bestsellers. Another example is a student who has always been known for getting high grades and is now faced with the pressure to live up to that standard or even exceed it. This kind of people eventually develop the perfectionist behavior in order to meet up to high standards, which are sometimes unrealistic. I mean, just because 1 or 2 of your books became bestsellers doesn't guarantee that subsequent ones will also rise to that level of success. So that's all for this video. In the next episode of the Perfectionism series, I'll be tracing the pros and cons of having this perfectionism traits. Trust me, the video is going to be as educative as this one was. That brings me to the end of this video, but then let's have some fun. If you're a perfectionist or you just discovered that you are one, you can share with me in the comment section below your experience being a perfectionist. So friends, thanks for watching, but before you go, please give this video a like, subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell in order to be aware when I upload the next episode of the Perfectionism series and any other video I upload. So bye for now.